Welcome back to the Matt and Eric Talk Twins podcast. I'm here with my co-host Matt, and that makes me Eric, and we have another week of Twins baseball to talk about. I don't know if I can say a whole lot more about it than that. Off the rip, Matt, what do you have for us?
It was a week, not a good week, but a week. Twins aren't playing particularly well. Their playoff odds are kind of falling apart at the moment, but we can certainly talk about it.
Yeah, I feel like when we're talking about how bad of a week it has been for the Twins, which don't get me wrong, after getting swept by the Phillies, it has been a rough week for the Twins. It really is just as much about seemingly every other team, not every other team, but enough teams around us getting hot really fast that is just really putting us right back into this hole that we haven't really seen ourselves in since what, start of June?
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, the Twins haven't been playing well for a while, right? So dating back to like the end of July, they won the first game in Seattle, lost the next two to lose that series, lost a series in Kansas City, lost a series in Milwaukee, won a series at home against Baltimore, and then just got swept by the Phillies. So they've lost quite a few series recently. They're just not playing all that well. And previously, or the first part of that skid, the Twins were kind of bailed out by honestly the rest of the teams in wild card contention also playing poorly. But right now the Twins have lost three in a row. Baltimore's won three in a row. Other teams like Texas have kind of held steady. And then even Detroit, they're on a losing streak right now, but we're surging for a bit. And now the Twins find themselves only a game and a half out of the wild card hunt, but they are going to have to jump five teams ahead of them to get back into that third wild card spot. And if you look at the division, it's even worse. The Twins are 6 games back of the White Sox right now, who look like they're just going to run away with the Central.
Yeah, unfortunately for us, Detroit staying very much on par with us in the division, or not in the division, the wild card race, did mean the White Sox swept them in the same time frame that the Phillies swept us. So while it keeps us in the thick of the wild card race, I personally think I almost would have rather seen the Tigers stay on top of the White Sox and keep us into the divisional race, because somehow that still ends up feeling like it would have been the easier race for the Twins to chase down. Now they, like you said, still don't have maybe as much distance to go, but it gets a lot foggier than it was at the trade deadline, which is not what you wanted when you just bought into a bunch of pieces.
Yeah, here's the thing though. None of this matters. Scoreboard watching ceases to matter if the Twins don't win, right? And so having I think a 4-9 record since the end of July, really not a whole lot else is going to matter if your team is struggling that badly. We've seen that reflect in the Twins playoff odds. They're all the way down to 19.5%. And so to me, that's pretty much saying they're not dead in the water, but it's going to take a real winning streak. They're going to have to go on a run here to be, back in the thick of things.
Yeah, it might not be the most surprising news of the season, but it really does look like if we're going to make a playoff make a playoff spot this season, that we are going to have to sweat it out to pretty much the very last day. There's not going to be any gimmies here for the Twins. I think that's what you kind of hoped for, right? When we had that third wild card spot locked up as we were entering the trade deadline, as we were probably, I would say, more aggressive than the average team that was also hanging around in our wild card area was at the trade deadline, and it just has not paid off for us. And I mean, at this point, you could call up Walker Jenkins. I know a lot of people are really clamoring for that, but this feels like we're more than a Walker Jenkins sized band aid away from turning things around, does it not?
Yeah, I think really the big thing for this team and the reason they've lost so many games recently isn't even the lineup or the defense. The pitching staff has just honestly gotten hit pretty hard recently. Joe Ryan being injured obviously hurts the team, but Taj Bradley didn't look super sharp in the Field of Dreams game. He had another start before that, I think against the Brewers, where he started off hot and then gave up some runs in the middle innings. Dean Kramer struggled today. Outside of that, he's been really good in a Twins uniform, but how much of that can you really expect to continue going forward? And then all the other guys have just really struggled. Like we saw Connor Prelip give up 8 runs in 5 innings to the Phillies. That was hard to watch. Zebby hasn't been very good. Like it just feels like the rotation is kind of undermanned, and there's not going to be a fix for that rest of season, right? Like the only guy that's in AAA that the Twins could call up is Kendry Rojas, and he's not an improvement over any of the current guys.
Okay, I don't know if I would go that far, especially the way that Connor Prelip looked in his last start. I'm not saying that I believe in Kendry Rojas to come out here and turn our season around and save the team. I think if there's anything that's going to give us that juice, it's really just going to be Joe Ryan, hopefully getting back soon and being healthy and pitching like he did in the first half. Because, I mean, that alone, we talked about this last week, right? Just having one guy every fifth day that can grab the wheel and steer the ship for a little bit. I think that's what the Twins have sorely been lacking. We talked about in our last episode how the Twins have really been ambushing a lot of starters, pushing bullpens deep and early in the series. And it kind of just feels like that's been us for a while now. We've been taking some of our lumps the way we've been dishing them out. And at some point, you need a break. And it feels like we should have gotten that with 2 days off around the Field of Dreams game. But this Twins team still just feels like it's struggling to stay above water.
Yeah, I mean, they just don't have the pitching, right? And like they added some at the deadline and getting a couple relievers is cool, and Dean Kramer's been helpful, but still, like when you lose Mick Abel, you lose Pablo Lopez is the big one. Now you're down Joe Ryan. You haven't seen Festa all year. Like it's really hard to still build a consistent pitching staff. And for what it's worth, Connor Prelip has the third highest WAR among Twins pitchers this year. And if you're talking about like Prelip hasn't been that good, I will say he has almost an identical xFIP to Taj Bradley. Prelip's been hurt a little bit by, some just like bad luck. Like he's giving up a little bit higher of a BABIP. He's given up some home runs. But Taj Bradley, 401 xFIP. Connor Prelip, 402 xFIP. And so, I mean, clearly he's one of the Twins' better arms. He's fallen apart a little bit recently, which is to be expected for a guy who's way past his career innings workload. But Prelip's doing that while averaging about 5 innings per start, a little bit more than 5 innings. If you look at what Kendry Rojas has done this year, 470 xFIP, and that's only averaging like 2.5 innings per appearance.
It's really weird to me to try and juxtapose the idea that we're still really excited for this rotation next year with where we're at now, right? Because like it's still easy to look at where we're at next season and say that, we're going to be well stocked and well set, but how it's just weird to me how quick it falls apart. We've been talking about this all season, but it's really just been kind of disheartening, I think, to see this group not be able to put it all together at the same time because this seemed to be such a point of emphasis in the off season. It's frustrating to have been attacking this issue and making sure that we would be seemingly well adjusted for, a very deep starting pitching rotation this season, and then to just still have it fall apart.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say they attacked the issue, right? Like they didn't bring in any starting pitching, right? They have their deadline guys from last year. They have some guys that they hoped were going to be healthy this year, like Festa, who haven't been. But like they didn't bring anyone in the offseason. They talked about bringing in Fromber, which in retrospect, like Fromber hasn't lived up to that deal, but he would be a godsend for this rotation currently. And so, yeah, I mean, we definitely thought that the rotation was going to be the strength, but I wouldn't say that they like attacked it, right?
I think by attacking it, I more meant just that they didn't really tear it apart like they have been with the rest of the team recently, right? Because I mean, McCable threw a little bit at the start of the season, enough that I was certainly very encouraged by what I saw. But at the end of the day, you could ultimately argue that the Twins have had three season-ending injuries from three guys in Pablo Lopez, David Festa, and McCable, that they all expected to be like decently big contributors, if not to the rotation, then to the bullpen this season. And I do think that's just it's we don't really put it that way, right? Because David Festa was already hurt, and McAble, like I said, did get a little bit of pitching in, but this really has been a sizable chunk of our pitching plans for the year that we've had to go more or less the entire season without.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that point, right? Like pitching injuries just happen, and it seems like the Twins have gotten hit a little bit harder than most. I will say the Twins haven't really had a whole lot of injuries in the bullpen. It's just been Cole Sands, but Cole Sands, yes, he was one of the higher leverage arms in a very bad bullpen to start the year, but he's like a sixth or seventh inning guy. Like he's not a real stud at this point. So they haven't lost a whole lot from an injury perspective in the bullpen. In the rotation, yes, losing Pablo is big. You had high hopes for Mick Abel. You're hoping Festa would be back healthy, but like it's it's pretty reasonable to even going into the season say we can't rely on David Festa for anything. We're not even counting him as part of the bullpen or part of the rotation depth. I think that's a reasonable thing to have thought. And then if you're only two starting pitcher injuries away from Mike Paredes pitching games, right? Like you're two guys going down away from being in really tough shape. I think that that's not as much depth as we thought going into the year because you're always going to have at least two injuries in a season. Like it's very hard to make it through a year with five or six starters. Like you have to be eight or nine deep. And at the point where we're moving Andrew Morris to the bullpen and then a couple guys get hurt, it gets really shallow really quickly. And I think maybe if this front office had it to do over again, when they had some injuries, maybe they would have addressed it in spring training. I know it's hard to make a trade in spring training, especially to bring in an impact starting pitcher, of course. But I have to think that if Jeremy Zoll could go back 4 months from now and on the day that Pablo gets hurt in February, he could swing a trade for a decent, even fourth starter. He'd probably be wanting to do that because this Twins team would be in a much better spot if they just had some more reliable starting pitching.
I don't disagree, but I do also wonder at what point we are starting to wish for too much buy-in to a team that I once again am still not certain deserves all of this buy-in right now overall. I think we can certainly sit here and say a lot of our issues are coming from the pitching staff. Obviously, you already have highlighted that we haven't had a lot of great pitching in this last week specifically when we've been on a losing streak, but let's be real. I mean, the bullpen also blew up our game today. We did get the ball to them with a lead, and they couldn't convert it once again. The offense
Okay,
has
but
really
to be
been
fair, the
on and off.
bullpen has
I
been
mean,
nails since the deadline. Like the bullpen's been very good.
it's been much better than it was in the first half. I don't know if I'd quite go so far as to say nails. I would also say that this offense has been very streaky again, where we've had games where we have erupted for big run numbers and we have pushed bullpens and taxed them to go deep with a lot of arms, throwing a lot of innings, but then we just haven't been able to capitalize even when we do put ourselves into that situation. So at what point do we have to once again look around and remind ourselves where we were really at when the season started and where we really believe this Twins team still is? We're acting almost like a playoff spot was the expectation post trade deadline, and I still think that was a little bit lofty maybe.
The Twins bullpen has the sixth best ERA in baseball since the deadline.
Okay, yeah, they have been pretty good. I will give you
Yeah.
that. But the team overall still, I think the point stands.
Yeah, I mean, sure, I agree. My counterpoint would be no team is going to be good unless you're giving them good pieces, right? Like a team, the success of a team is based on how good the pieces making up that team are. And if you continually are saying, this team's not worth investing in, we're going to sell off pieces and we're going to build for some theoretical future. And oh, now we have some guys that are playing well, but it's just a couple guys. We're not really ready to bring in more guys to help. We're going to sell again. Like you get into a perpetual cycle. And I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir to you and to Twins fans that like selling all the time for an eventual future isn't the best path. That's how you end up in some pretty dark places for a perpetual rebuilding team. But this Twins team has a lot of good hitting. I don't know that it's super sustainable, but the lineup has produced well. and you have some areas to be like really optimistic about and some reasons to kind of push for the now versus the future, right? Byron Buxton, he's been banged up recently, but he's been mostly healthy. He had his best season ever last year. He's playing really well when healthy this season. Ryan Jeffers is an impending free agent. He's having a breakout. Cody Clemens is having an age 30 breakout of his own. Trevor Larnach's playing really well. And then you have all these young guys, too, who are getting hot and are playing great. Like Brooks Lee has looked like a solid third baseman. Luke Keeschel has like a 400 on base percentage for the last 2 months. Like he's been excellent offensively. There's a lot of reasons to believe in this young position player core with a couple of super productive veterans that makes me feel like I am happy that they are investing at that deadline. But yeah, I agree. Like you can't build a whole pitching staff at a deadline, and that's kind of what the Twins needed. If we were sitting here and they had gotten Hoffman, they got Minter, they got Kramer, and then also on deadline day they pulled off a deal for a Jose Soriano, a Reed Detmers, someone like that, I think we'd be in a much better spot.
But at what point is that against the detrimental to the future of our team, right? Because I mean, we talked at length last week about some of the prices it would have taken to get these guys. How if we were going to get Reed Detmers from the Angels, that it was probably going to take Walker Jenkins, which the Twins weren't going to do. We
That
both
was that
agreed
was
that
Zach Neto.
Zach
They were
Neto,
not
that is
asking
correct.
for.
That is correct. But I mean, even then, it largely sounds like Reed Detmers was just not for sale. We got outbid once for Jose Soriano, and then we still had the opportunity to give up Culpepper plus Riley Quick for Soriano from the Blue Jays, which is something you and me both agreed would not have been a good move for the Twins to make. So at what point do you just kind of throw your hands up and say, well, we did supplement this team with talent at the trade deadline, but I don't know that I even now would want to have given up a package of just Kalen Culpepper even for Jose Soriano because we still have a future to consider here. And I think that I don't want to sell that future just to really fight to scrape and barely make the playoffs.
Sure, but that's also saying that Kalen Culpepper is going to be anything for the future, right? Like you have to believe that. Otherwise, you're going to trade all of your prospects and you're never going to have young players on your team. But like if you look at buy side moves at the deadline over the last 10, 15 years, like a lot of times those buying teams, even when they're giving up a perceived haul, they do pretty well in them. Like even the deals where at the time people go, oh man, I can't believe they paid this price. Like I remember hearing about the JT Real Muto trade at the deadline, like what, probably 6 or 7 years ago, and being like, dude, they gave up Alfaro and Sixto Sanchez. Like, what do you mean? That's a great package for an older catcher. And then Real Muto's still been a very productive catcher for the last 6 or 7 years. Sixto Sanchez's arm blew up, and Jorge Alfaro was never anything. So, like, prospects are great. It's great to dream on them. At some point, cashing them in for real value is what's important. And either that's this guy comes up and he's good, or you trade him for a player that you know is good. And yeah, I mean, if you don't consider yourself a real contender this year, like I can see why you'd want the more control, the higher volatility option in keeping a guy like Kalen Culpepper. And I'm not even saying that I would be specifically looking to trade him, but at some point, like you do need to just bring in good players, and you can't hug prospects forever.
No, I do very much get that. I just don't think that this deadline was where that line was really drawn for the Twins. I think I have no issue still with them looking at what they did and saying, okay, let's just call up Kalen Culpepper instead of going out and getting another starter because we do still have five arms that they believe are competent enough for them to throw out there every fifth day. Whether you want to debate how good some of those arms have actually been, I'm really looking at you, Zebby Matthews, is one thing, but you really can't get mad at the team for wanting to just simply believe that the young guys might be good. Give Kalen Culpepper the rest of the season because who knows if he does really well. Maybe he's even more of like a top 10, top 5 prospect entering this offseason. Then you could trade him for even more. I really don't know how much damage he could do to his stock in this cup of tea that he's going to get here in August and September.
Yeah, I mean, he could look pretty bad. Like it took less than half a season for Scott Kingery to go from like top 30 prospect in baseball, getting a big, pre-debut extension to like this contract's underwater and no one wants him. And so like you do learn a lot from prospects in their first couple months in the league. I'm not saying that he's going to completely tank his value, but like there's definitely some damage that could be done. But I mean, I agree. We've been saying that the Twins need a long term shortstop, and if they think that that can be Kalen Culpepper, I'm definitely all for giving him that opportunity. I'm just saying it's hard to be super optimistic about a team whose third start. Well, okay. First of all, anyone in the rotation after Taj Bradley right now is a real question mark. And even Bradley hasn't thrown well. But then, like, number two is really a debate between Connor Prelip, who just gave up 8 runs to the Phillies, and Dean Kramer, who was just acquired after, like, not being highly sought after. And now he gave up 4 runs to the Phillies. That's your competition for the second and third starter spots without Joe Ryan. Your fourth starter is Bailey Ober, who is throwing 86 miles an hour and has like a 4.8 xFIP on the year. And then your fifth starter is Zebby Matthews, who he's gotten like 50 starts in the big leagues over the last 3 years and has a 5.6 career ERA. Like it's really not a good rotation. And like it's just hard to think that this team is going to be able to climb back into contention with this rotation. Because like the bullpen, as we talked about, is doing all that they can. Sixth best ERA since the deadline among relief groups. Like that is them performing at the highest level possible. You look at the offense; they're still scoring runs. They're 1-9 positive contributors with the bat. It all just kind of lies on the starting pitching right now, and they look severely undermanned. And you look down in AAA, and it's like Ryan Gallagher or Kendry Rojas. Like neither of those are super intriguing options. Our top pitching prospect is Riley Quick, who's in his first professional season. He's in AA. Like they're not calling him up. Like it just feels like it's undermanned, and there's no help on the way.
But at the same time, this is the exact same rotation, I guess, albeit minus Joe Ryan, that got us to this strong first half finish that put us in a position where you could look at it and also say, yeah, let's say Joe Ryan comes back next week and he's healthy, he looks great. We have a legitimate ace atop the rotation. I'm not going to say that Taj Bradley is the most consistent starter out there, but for as many blow up games as he does seem to have, like he did in the Field of Dreams games, there's also plenty of games where, yeah, he can lock it down. He has, as I mentioned earlier, been hitting 100 plus pitches somewhat consistently this season. Anytime that he's been throwing well, Derek Shelton has shown that he has a very long leash, that he has the opportunity to go out there and really attack for a long time. So while it's not great, it's also not that far from being what it was at the start of the season, which I still believe would be enough with this revamped bullpen to make them a playoff contender still throughout the rest of the stretch.
Sure, but that's also relying on guys to be the same 100, 150 innings later as they were starting the year, right? Like we've seen Joe Ryan wear down in the second halves, and I'm not saying that that has any real predictive value, right? Like I think a lot of it's been injuries and some randomness, but like if he's more of a high 3 ERA guy than a sub 3 ERA starting pitcher, like that's a big difference. Taj Bradley is getting up there in workload as well. I think I'm less concerned about him. If you look at Connor Prelip, he's still on track to throw more innings this season alone than all seasons dating back to high school. Like if you take 18-year-old Connor Prelip and then you take every pitch he threw from then through this season, that includes all of college, that includes a good chunk of the minor leagues, everything up until this year, combine all of those innings, he will be at less than he's thrown this year. And so it's really hard for me to think that, Connor Prelip was really good in May and early June, and that's what kind of got us to the point where we feel like we could be a wild card contender. And he's going to be that same pitcher in September when he's truly like double the most innings he's ever thrown in his life. And that's just a couple guys. Like it goes deeper than that. And I just I don't know. I'm losing a lot of faith in this pitching staff.
I don't blame
No,
you
no,
because they have done nothing to give us any sort of faith. But at the same time, it's just like these are all just regular ins and outs of the seasons type of woes. Like, yeah, you're spot on that Connor Prelip is definitely probably uncomfortable with how many innings he's thrown at this point, that these 100 pitch outings are going to start adding up to Taj Bradley, that even when Joe Ryan comes back, he's probably not going to be 100%. But I guarantee you that every fan base could sit here right now and wax poetic about the same issues that they are facing with guys getting worn down, tired, and pitching to a less effective manner. So to that level, I really just kind of don't believe that the Twins are being hurt any more than any other team. And to me, that just makes it hard to excuse our fall off in that manner.
okay, except no other team in baseball is employing a starting pitcher who averages 87 on his fastball. Like that, like the bar was already low for this rotation. Like Bailey Ober has been in the middle of this rotation picture the entire season, and he is pretty clearly just not very good anymore. And then you also think about like Zebby. Okay, Zebby has some upside, right? We've seen the great outings, and it looks phenomenal. He looks like it's going to click, and he's going to be a mid rotation arm. But this is now year 3 of Zebby in the rotation, and like I said, he's never posted. I'll pull up the exact number, but he's like a career 5.6 ERA. And pretty much every season is like that. There's not a lot of contending teams that are rolling out two back end options like that are that bad, right? Like this is the best ERA season of Zebby's career, and it's a 5.34, and his career ERA is a 5.67. And so you combine that with mid 80s Bailey Ober, and you're saying 2 out of these 5 games were pretty unlikely to win on a week in and week out basis.
Zebby Matthews has got to be the most disappointing out of all of these guys, right? Because to me, he felt almost the most foolproof, the highest floor out of all these young guys we've had coming up because he was just such a command darling in the minor leagues where he just placed everything in the zone and was able to get away with it because he had such sharp command to keep it at the middle of the plate. And it just I don't understand why it doesn't stick the same in the major leagues. I understand that part of it is just that better major league hitters make less of the zone available to pitch to, but at the end of the day, it just feels like there's been so many more meatballs than we're used to seeing from him in the minor leagues.
Well, this is where you get into the value of having actual scouts watch games versus just looking at stats. Because if you look at his stat line in the minors, it always appeared that he had great command because he just didn't walk anyone. But in reality, he had really good control, right? Like he was able to control it enough that he threw strikes, and he had high end, like pretty good velocity, a great slider in the minors, and that was good enough to blow away single A, double A, triple A hitters. But now in the big leagues, when you're able to throw a lot of strikes, but those strikes aren't necessarily in the parts of the zone where you want them to be, right? A lot of pitches are floating over the middle of the plate. A lot of pitches are in hittable spots. Now, big league hitters aren't fooled by a guy who's throwing 95, 96. They see that every day. What's a great slider in the minors is more of like an above average slider in the big leagues. And when it's not located, they can sure hit it. And so now Zebby's kind of throwing the same way he did through the minors, but his stuff isn't good enough to make that strategy work against big league hitters. And now those pitches that he used to be able to get away with throwing over the plate are just getting hit, and he doesn't have the command to live around the edges.
At what point do we have to like start considering Mike Paredes to come back up? I mean I know you weren't that excited about Kendry Rojas coming back up, but we have 2 months left of the season. Like we still have a lot of baseball left to figure out. Is it approaching the point for you where Zebby Matthews is unplayable?
Yeah, the thing is, there's just no good options behind him. Like, I just spent a bunch of time complaining about Zebby Matthews and his mid-5 ERA, but like he has a 4.2 xFIP on the year. Like he underperforms his xFIP every year, and so I'm less enthused by that. But you look at like Mike Paredes, he has a 5.45 xFIP. He also averaged less than 4 innings per appearance. He's not going to go deep. You're not super certain he's going to be good on an inning by inning basis. And also, Mike Paredes, in his cup of coffee with the Twins, 12.3% K rate against an 8.4% walk rate. So his strikeout rate is like half of what you would expect a big league pitcher to produce while producing a below average walk rate. I don't want to see Mike Paredes outside of an emergency situation. Oh,
Yeah,
also,
well,
okay. Also, Mike Paredes is hurt. I don't know why. Like, he's on the injured list. He has an oblique strain.
oh damn, I don't think I knew that one about Mike Paredes. So then, yeah, we really just don't have an answer. So maybe that's the frustrating part about all of this, and why this entire conversation feels just kind of pointless, because we can do all this complaining about what we have and what we don't have and what we maybe wish we had halved right now.
A lot of halves there.
A lot of haves, but what the have nots is what the Twins need, which is more help to aid the starting pitching staff. And I just, like Matt said, don't see it coming down the pipeline. So is I refuse to call this a sinking ship and saying that, the odds, our odds are gone, we've set sail, we've gone in too deep with these guys. But how do we start to build faith? How do we start to believe that we can actually dig ourselves out of this hole?
I mean, the best bet for that, right, is Joe Ryan's healthy in the next week or 10 days. You plug him back into the rotation. You send Zebby back to AAA, and you hope that Connor Prelip rights the ship. At that point, if Prelip is pitching like the guy he was early in the season, you still feel decent about the Ryan, Bradley, Prelip top. Kramer and Ober can at least eat innings and keep you in ball games late. Zebby can go sit in AAA until you get to mid-September, and then you convert him to short relief, where hopefully his stuff will play up a little bit better, and he can, be a real weapon out of the bullpen. Like, I think that's the only real hope from the pitching side. And then honestly, like, even that gets them back to just being like a respectable rotation. Then the lineup just needs to hit, and like they have been, but it just needs to go to another level. Like, if they're going to make the playoffs, the lineup's going to have to mash. The starters are going to have to do enough to keep them in the game, and then the new acquisitions in the bullpen are going to have to really hold it down in the back end.
I think if we're going to talk about that lineup a little bit more, I do want to bring up something that I know Aaron Gleeman just put out a pretty long article about, something that fans have been clamoring for even longer and does seem overdue at this point. There's a lot of chatter that Walker Jenkins is coming up soon. I don't remember exactly when it was that he doesn't have to worry about adding a year of service time. I know that was really the big thing, right? Is that if he had came up too soon, he would have lost his rookie status for next season, which the Twins, I'm sure, definitely want, as they probably envision him opening the season on the opening day roster and giving them a very good chance at winning a Rookie of the Year award, getting that compensatory pick in the draft, all that great jazz. But I believe that that time frame is passed, and that at any point the Twins could bring up Walker Jenkins here without him losing out on his rookie eligibility from this season. So that kind of seems like a no-brainer now, right?
It's okay. So we spent so long at the beginning of the season talking about the glut of left-handed hitting outfielders, and it didn't really come to pass because Walker Jenkins hurt his shoulder. He missed like 2 months. Emmanuel Rodriguez tore his UCL in his thumb. He missed a couple months. Even Alan Roden tore his labrum. He missed a month. So, like, we had kind of a break where we had all of these left handed hitting outfielders get hurt. And so there wasn't pressure on the big league roster to bring them up. Now we're in the same spot that we talked about in February and March and April, where we have all these left-handed outfielders, but then we also have Luke Keeschel, who the Twins have not played in the infield for like a month. He's exclusively played the outfield to the point where when they went to a 5-man infield the other day, they brought in Austin Martin from the outfield to play the infield instead of Luke Keeschel, which to me points that they just don't want Keeschel in the infield at all. And so Keishel's playing really well. He's going to play every day in a corner spot. If Buxton's healthy, Buxton's playing center field. That leaves only left field open. And you have Alan Roden, who's in the big leagues. He's not playing really well, but you need to give him some run at some point to see what you have. And he only has like 60 plate appearances this year. You have Walker Jenkins, who, again, tearing up AAA. You'd like to see him at some point. He's the highest upside option. And then you also have Emmanuel Rodriguez, who's back in AAA. He's healthy again and is out of options after the season. So you want to give him some run this year before you have to have him on the roster next season. You have all three of those guys pushing for what's really one outfield spot and left. And then you think, well, who's playing left right now? It's Trevor Larnach, who's the Twins' third most productive hitter on the season. And like, yeah, Larnach's not a good outfielder. You can move him to DH. Well, then you're not playing Josh Bell, and Josh Bell's been one of their better hitters. And like, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that playing Josh Bell for the next 6 weeks should preclude them from bringing up a top prospect if they think that guy is ready, right? Josh Bell is good. He's not that good, and he can always come off the bench. He can play against left-handed pitching, like, sure. But I'm just saying there's a lot of mouths to feed for this situation. And I think that's why the Twins were willing to trade Trevor Larnach at the deadline.
That's another one of those in a different world. I think the Twins would be a lot better off right now, which is the same thing we said about the starting pitching staff, which makes it very bittersweet, I would almost say, because we're so happy at the trade deadline that we did the thing that we wanted them to do and we were buyers and that like everything was supposed to be good now. But I know
If
I
you
have
want to
two trains
go
of thoughts here. Go ahead.
if you want to go real butterfly effect, you could say that if the Twins were able to swap Larnach for Brian Abreu and have Abreu be the right-handed bullpen option instead of Hoffman, the Twins don't have to dangle Dason Hill and others in that deal. They're more willing to trade prospect capital, and maybe they go get a controllable starting pitcher with that capital. It's like several lines of thinking deep, but like it's entirely possible that Jim Crane stepping in on that deal not only is delaying the promotion of the left-handed hitting bats in AAA, but also is part of the reason why we don't have as deep of a rotation mix.
It is definitely two just very divergent, different paths that the Twins could have taken to the deadline. I'm still not convinced that trading Trevor Larnach. I mean, yeah, it would have made us like more inclined maybe to go get out and get a starting pitcher, but it wouldn't have made those deals any better. You know, at the end of the day, I think even if we hadn't traded Dason Hill for Jeff Hoffman, that the Twins still probably don't want to pull the trigger on Kalen Culpepper plus Riley Quick for Jose Soriano because that's just not a good deal. At the end of the day, I think the reason the Twins didn't buy starting pitching at the deadline is because there was simply not any starting pitching worth the price they were going to have to pay. I honestly think the closest thing the Twins could have and should have gone for in terms of price range and what they should have been paying for pitching would have been Kevin Gausman, which I mean that would have been really fun.
The
But I
Twins
don't
were
think
in on Kevin Gossman.
they were. And I mean, let's be real. He went for cheap enough price that if you really wanted Kevin Gausman, you were going to get Kevin Gausman. And I think that's a guy that even overpaying for him a little bit is worth your time because A, the prospect return is just not going to be that large still, right? Like overpaying for Kevin Gausman probably looks like less of a return than what we gave up even for Jeff Hoffman. But I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and fault the Twins for not making a deal in a pitching market that really did not support the idea of like we should be adding a pitcher right now.
Okay, that's like this every year, right? It's like this in the offseason. It's like this at the deadline. It's the reason that the Red Sox offered Peyton Tolley and Franklin Arias for Joe Ryan at last year's deadline. It's the reason that we see pitchers go for huge returns every year. Like even the much maligned Tarek Skubal deal, like the Dodgers still gave up a lot of future value for Skubal, and that's only a couple month rental. And so at the point where pitchers are always expensive, right? They're always going for more than we think they should. At some point, that's just the price of a pitcher. And if you need a pitcher, you have to pay that price.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we're just back to beating a dead horse where I'm not sure that the Twins really should have been paying that price at this time. But I do want to come back and focus more on where we are at now, the path we did choose to take, because I have two pretty big thoughts. One of them you already touched on. I just want to really reaffirm that. Look, I get Josh Bell's been good. If we want him to, if we want to win, he probably should be playing. Maybe should be playing. But at the end of the day, I don't think Josh Bell is good enough to be blocking any form of at bats from Walker Jenkins because I think probably a 50-50 chance already at this point that Walker Jenkins is just going to give you more of a contribution than Josh Bell. And B, I just think the development makes it worth our time in a season that's not totally lost yet, but also like not our buy in, go for it season. Second of all, I'm sorry, I am frustrated that the Twins are taking such a hard stance on Luke Keeschel in the infield. I'm not saying he's a good defender in the infield. I'm not saying I want him there long term, but I am saying for this season, with the way we've chosen to construct the roster, it would be a lot easier to get everybody their at bats that they really probably do and have earned at this point with Luke Keeschel playing in the infield. And we cannot
But who do
act
you
like he's been any better as an outfielder.
yeah, but who do you take at bats away from in the infield? Because it's still then Lee, Lewis, now Culpepper playing short, and then Clemens playing second. Like those are some of your better hitters as well. Like
I
all
think
guys that deserve playing time. The only way that you plug Keishel in there without taking at bats away from someone who's been a good contributor this year, or at least for an extended period of time, is by moving Brooks Lee back to shortstop and not playing Culpepper. But that just hurts your defense and hurts your ability to evaluate another young player.
honestly, I think that is a little bit of Cody Clemens right now. He has been great this season, but not necessarily great recently, and I think that's where the Twins can afford to ride a bit of a hot hand. They've been playing Royce Lewis almost every single day, as they should be right now, because Royce Lewis has been really, really hot, and he deserves to be playing every day. Cody Clemens has been more good, not great recently. Give him less playing time. I'm okay with that. As we mentioned at the top of the pod, it's a surprising 30-year-old breakout. I really don't think it means that much. And if it's not leading to winning baseball in the moment, then yeah, let's give him a bit of an extended break to, maybe get his head straight, maybe make some more larger adjustments in the cage, whatever he feels like he needs to do. Give him some time. If that means we can get Luke Keeschel back in the infield, more Walker Jenkins at bats. I just think that Walker Jenkins is mashing AAA right now to the point that he is kind of obnoxiously sticking his nose in our major league plans and saying, "Hey, I belong here."
Yeah, and that's fair. I guess I hadn't realized how far back down to earth Cody Clemens has come. He's now to the point where he has a 285 on base percentage for the year, which is pretty bad. His slug is still decent. Like he's still hitting the ball hard. He's hitting extra base hits. But like overall, 102 WRC plus for a guy who's like an average defender at second. Yeah, I mean, he can probably just be in more of a utility role. Maybe that means when we need an extra guy in the outfield, he's playing instead of, well, I mean, we don't even need him to play the outfield, but maybe
Honestly,
he,
make him a platoon split guy at first with Josh Bell, just clean and simple. They
except
can
Josh
each
Bell's
get
not playing first. Josh Bell's like
again. He
exclusively
can play
DHing.
first. Like I get that he
Yeah,
hasn't
but you
been.
have Royce Lewis. You have Royce Lewis. There's no reason to play Josh Bell at first.
To me, getting Luke Keeschel back into the infield to get more at bats to Walker Jenkins, like I am now prioritizing Walker Jenkins at bats at the major league level. If I'm Jeremy Zoll, I really am.
Yeah, but no part of getting Walker Jenkins into the big league lineup necessitates playing Josh Bell at first.
All right, then let Cody Clemens be a platoon at first base. Well, no, because Cody Clemens is a lefty, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So let him platoon at first with Royce Lewis and let Josh Bell. I don't even know. You wouldn't even really call it a platoon at DH because he's a switch hitter, and I don't know who he'd be platooning there with. I guess maybe you would just say Trevor Larnach. If you have a Josh Bell and Trevor Larnach platoon at DH, then you can have Cody Clemens and Royce platoon at first, with Royce and Keishel also sharing time at second. And then bam, now you've got left field entirely opened up for Walker Jenkins to play every day, and you can still play your rotation of Alan Roden and Austin Martin in right field. And everybody's happy.
Yeah, I mean, sure, that works. It's just taking playing time away from Clemens and Bell, which is fine in the longer term. I would say at first base, just because he's been better and he's been good against both handed pitchers, I wouldn't necessarily want to platoon Royce Lewis. I think you just let him ride at first and see what he does rest of season. And you can kind of have Cody Clemens be in the utility role where he can play some first, he can play some second. If you need him in the outfield, he can play there. But yeah, I mean, I guess that is a reasonable path for it. I do think the path you laid out to using the DH spot, where you move Larnick there, and then against left-handed pitching, it's Josh Bell. Like that's totally fine. But yeah, it's there's just a lot of mouths to feed. Like I wish it was just more straightforward for this group. It was like, well, we have these six guys that we know where they're playing, and these other three spots, we have some guys that we think are helpful, or they can be a platoon, or we have some young guys coming up that can take that spot. But right now, because positions are so nebulous, and because we have so many guys who are like good but not great, but we don't really trust long term, or they're not signed long term, it just creates all these situations where it's like there's 19 different ways we could configure this lineup, and none of them, like you can argue for any of them over the next. Like you could argue they should be prioritizing playing Alan Roden over playing Walker Jenkins, because if it doesn't click this year for Roden, his path to playing time next year is even worse, and they traded for him. They obviously believe in him. You want to see what you have. Or you could say, well, you want Jenkins to win Rookie of the Year next year. You want him to play because he's going to get his feet wet, gives him a better chance to perform next year, and he's the highest upside option. You could say, well, I want Emmanuel Rodriguez to play because he's out of options next year and you need him to get his feet wet before he has to hit. Or you could say, oh, they should play Keishel, or they should play Larnick, or they should play whoever. Like there's arguments for everyone, and it's just not like, to me that's a symbol of a offense that's a little bit like disjointed. It's kind of like in football, right? Like if you have multiple quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. If at every position you have like four guys who could theoretically be productive there, then you have no guys who are real starters anywhere.
The Twins' offense is the current Browns quarterbacks room. That's really all it is to me. But I will say we are
Except
now
the Twins are productive.
semi-productive, but again, like I mean, some of this we are arguing. I would say over a bunch of buttons with Austin Martin and the way that Cody Clemens has been playing recently, and Josh Bell certainly has his days where he's great, but he hasn't. I mean, outside of what I think the first half of July, he hasn't really put together any 2 to 3 weeks even that have had him super en fuego. And I do think we're hitting a point here where we're roughly 8 weeks, I think even a few less out from the playoffs. We just detailed how dire our situation is now, where we're only 1.5 games out, but we still have 5 teams to jump. Now is the time when you jettison what got you here and you see what these young guys have, because what's happening now isn't getting it done. Like I understand that Cody Clemens has put together a great year to date, that you would like to see him play more, but he's not getting it done right now. I understand that Josh Bell is a very savvy veteran that has contributed so much to the stabilization of this lineup this season, but we need more than what we're getting out of Josh Bell, and confidently that you're not going to get more out of Josh Bell anymore, because that's just who he is at this age. So I think the Twins have every right now to be really jettisoning some of this dead weight for the young guys, because they not only are more important to the development of this team going forward, but B, have the potential upside that I think these guys don't have to give us anymore, that could jettison us back into a playoff position.
I love the use of jettison for like getting rid of players and then also jettisoning us into.
It's like how you see a rocket always take off in the movies, right? Like you've got the full shuttle, that takes off, and then as soon as you get out of orbit, it like
Okay,
kicks off that
I
little
see. I see
tail
what you're saying.
and it pushes
I
you
see
off
what you're
the other
saying.
way. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Jettison the engines.
That's exactly what the Twins are doing. And like, let's be real, Josh Bell was an engine to this offense so far this season. He has been remarkably healthy, and he's just been sitting there in the middle of the lineup. And he'll always go down as one of those fun Twins cult legends to me, where it's going to be like, hell yeah, Josh Bell, Twins legend right there. And if that's all he did with this team, it was still a worthwhile signing.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Bell is currently leading the Twins. Okay, RBIs don't matter at all, but he has 72 RBIs. Like, he's just sat in the middle of that lineup and gotten the job done.
Your grandpa out there would love that stat, to anybody listening.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, we're talking about the offense because there are buttons to push in the offense, right? Like, there are intriguing pieces at AAA. There are different machinations of this group. Like, you could move things around, you could change things up. And I think we're only talking about it because that's an option, right? It's not that the offense has been bad or that there needs to be a big mix up. It's just that we have the ability to mix it up. Really, to me, success or failure for this team rest of season is going to come down to the starting pitching just being decent and this rebuilt bullpen, holding late leads. And there's not a lot of buttons to push there. We talked about Kendry Rojas. We briefly touched on Ryan Gallagher, but like those are the only AAA starters that are available that would be at all seen as an upside case. We've seen a million relievers. Like, I don't think there's anyone that's going to be added to this bullpen mix. So, I mean, honestly, this has been a really downtrodden, like downbeat podcast. But really, it just comes down to our pitching bouncing back to a level where the rest of this team can push them to a playoff spot.
I will say too, since we're talking about the few buttons we can push on the pitching side, to me it's a travesty that we have Travis Adams on the 24-man roster still with Kendry Rojas in the minor leagues. I'm not even going to say that Kendry Rojas is the savior that we want him to be. As Matt already mentioned, that the expected numbers behind Rojas's start, well, not start, but starts and relief, I guess, that he's thrown out there this year aren't as great as what the raw numbers have been, but the undeniable upside is still there compared to what Travis Adams has, and the floor is non-existent either way. I mean, sure, Kendry Rojas could always blow up and have a bad game because he's a young rookie, doesn't really know what he's doing, but Travis Adams just does not look like Travis Adams is not a guy that I ever want the throwing with the Twins lead. Period. Full stop. Exclamation point. That's how bad it's gotten with him.
Yeah, I mean, Adams has gotten some bad luck. 5.92 ERA, but like a 4.12 xFIP. He does get strikeouts. He walks too many guys. Like, it's fine in middle relief. I think your broader point I agree with, that they do have some dead weight in the back end of this bullpen. Travis Adams is one guy, but also I don't see a whole lot of better results from Taylor Rogers. He's also been pretty bad. He has a 4.98 xFIP. I don't think anyone's expecting a whole lot from him. Funderburk's been better recently, but still 4.29 xFIP on the year. There's just a couple guys in that back end group that you're not super excited about. And I wouldn't mind seeing a different option come up. I will say, if you move Kendry Rojas to the bullpen, who's the next guy up? Because if you have another starter go down while Joe Ryan is still hurt, like Kendry Rojas is the only guy on the 40-man who has any starting experience like in AAA. Like, you could have said the Twins could turn to John Klein in an emergency situation. Well, he's a Blue Jay now. You could have said Mike Paredes, but he's probably out for the season with an oblique strain. The only other real prospect they have at AAA is Ryan Gallagher, and he hasn't been there for super long and only has been effective there for like the last month. And so I don't think they want to turn to him in a pennant race. So I feel like Rojas has to stay stretched out at AAA just by default, at least until Joe Ryan is back.
So my counter argument is, even with where Rojas is at right now in terms of being stretched out, quote unquote, would you really expect him to give you more than 4 innings in a start if you were to go out there and throw one next week? And at that point, is that like extra inning really more valuable than being able to just throw him in the bullpen and have him throw 2, 3 innings as a hybrid opener?
Yeah, I mean, sure. You'd have to have him in a long relief role. Like he would need to throw a dedicated day or two every week, going 2 or 3 innings. And that's hard to do in a big league bullpen. Like it's hard to plan that out. But if you're willing to do that, like sure, have him pitch in the big leagues. Um, yeah, it's
Honestly, why not have him and Zebby do what Rojas and Mike Paredes were doing for a few weeks there? Probably about 3, 4 starts in a row where every day, I mean, you didn't really know if it was going to be Paredes or Rojas. It was mainly Paredes starting with Rojas piggybacking. But I, again, think that would be the ideal setup for the Twins because we're at a point with Zebby where even if he has a good start to a game, you're just terrified after 4 innings, 5 tops. He's a guy that you really don't want seeing the third time through the order under any circumstances. So to me, that's a pretty seamless fit where you have Rojas throwing in long relief every fifth day. You're getting contributions from him at the major league level, but functionally still leaving him stretched out to be a starter if needed.
yeah, we haven't even talked about the Twins' newest signing in AAA, Herman Marquez, who is the only like veteran option there. I mean,
Do,
there's a non-zero chance that at some point the Twins just look at Zebby Matthews and they go, "You're not helping us as a starter. Herman Marquez can go out there and throw 5 innings and get shelled. Let's move you to a short relief role and just let Marquez eat it."
Yeah, you really cannot underscore how bad it's been with Zebby Matthews, where I don't think that Herman Marquez would be all that much worse if he came in right now. And so I'm actually, I don't know if I'd say I'm excited for Herman Marquez because that feels a little too optimistic. And I can't even tell you that I know what he's been doing for the past few years. I'm pretty sure he's just been hanging out in the Rockies minor league system.
He was a Padre to start this year, but has been in the Rockies rotation. Well, he was hurt for most of 2022 or 2023, 2024. Pitched like the whole year as a Rocky in their rotation last year, and then has been in the Padres rotation for part of this year.
I mean, it's something. At this point, it's just an arm to stop us from saying that, like, yeah, Ryan Gallagher or CJ Culpepper is, like, suddenly the next guy up. Because at this point, we don't need Herman Marquez to be a long term solution. We literally just need him to probably, hopefully, be like maybe a 3 week solution at most while we wait for Joe Ryan to get healthy again. And, I mean, we'll let him go at the end of the year. No harm, no foul.
Yeah, I mean, Herman Marquez is pretty bad at this point in his career, right? Like, I was just trashing Mike Paredes. Herman Marquez, only a slightly better strikeout rate, and it comes with a worse walk rate. His XFIP the last 2 years has been a 5.35 and a 5.39, and he's also only going like 4 innings per start. So it's not been super effective at all. But I will say, like a high 5.3 XFIP the last 2 years, and then you look at what Zebby's done. His XFIP for Zebby is always better than his ERA, but his ERA is consistently, in that mid fives range. It's a 5.34 this year, and that's his career best. So if you think that Herman Marquez's XFIP is probably indicative of his true talent at this point, and you also think Zebby's just going to be one of those guys that always underperforms his XFIP and that he's really a mid five ERA guy, well, they're probably pretty similar in overall production. And at least by having Marquez start, you can move Zebby into short relief and maybe you have another good reliever. I don't know that I'm necessarily advocating for that, but like there is some logic to it.
Well, folks, honestly, I'm not entirely sure where we got cut off there. A bit of a weird little incident, but Matt lost Wi-Fi at his apartment, so unfortunately, I think that's gonna do it for his night. Fortunately for us, as you know, the listeners, me and Matt, whatever you want to call it. Fortunately for us, we're already at the end of the podcast anyway. I mean, Let's be real. There's only so much to talk about with this Twins team this week. I think that's kind of the vibe, the energy that me and Matt really both had coming into the podcast today. Not that we weren't excited for it still, but certainly this Twins team has left a lot to be desired and really has not given us a lot worth talking about. So thankfully we got to the end of the podcast before things hit the fan. That's going to be it for this week. As always, if you want more of us, you can find us on Twitter at the Matt and Eric Talk Twins podcast. Also, both individually active on Twitter. Matt has started writing for Twins Daily. He's got some exciting stuff going on. Normally, writing about at least once a week, he's getting an article out there. So make sure to check him out there. And as always, you'll continue to find us every week wherever you get your podcasts on Spotify, on YouTube, on Apple. Till next week, thank you for listening.